governments. People, matter of fact, some of those big companies, AIG and Goldman Sachs, could have been very painful for them. They might have gone bankrupt. Who knows? But just keep our hands off and let it happen. But if you have really some significant changes made, a lot of liquidation of debt, and a lot of scary things happening, after a year or so, if we had our freedom, if we had the marketplace and property rights and contract rights and sound money and strictly limited government, I am so convinced of that philosophy that within a year or two, we would all be back on our feet again, even if those of us who have tried real hard to protect ourselves and our families, if all of it gets wiped off the table, but you're allowed to go back to work and allowed to keep what you earn, I'll tell you what, I think economic growth would come back so fast and we wouldn't have to worry about it. What's happened in Washington, they've lost confidence and an understanding about freedom and liberty. That's secondary to everything that they do. And the argument, of course, is that we have to give up our civil liberties. Since 9/11, is give up our civil liberties. We need the CIA. We need all this interrogation. We need this torture. We need all this because what good is it if you're not safe? How can you be free? You can't enjoy your freedom unless you're safe. But, of course, we know that once you start sacrificing your liberty for the so-called safety that government is supposed to provide, you end up, of course, with neither. And I think the point is well made when it is said that when President Bush or Obama comes out and he says, my main job is to make you safe. Well, is the main job of a policeman to make you safe in your home? Can you imagine how many policemen would be to make safe in your home? I thought we were made safe with the Second Amendment is the way we were supposed to make ourselves. But too often we've made these sacrifices and the people are willing to go along with it. If there's a major crisis overseas with another major bombing or a lot of Americans being killed, there will be a much greater eagerness to even sacrifice more of our liberties. So the issue is liberty. And the two issues that I have picked to concentrate on in relationship to protection of liberty has been the monetary system because it is so key in everything that we do. It was interesting when I first read that, why is money so important? Well, it's 1/2 of every transaction you have. So therefore, the issue of money and the value of your money and what they do is involved in every single thing that we do. And the other interest I've had is in foreign policy. And I have to admit that probably in the early 70s, although I did have some personal experiences about what it was like for our government to be involved, remembering World War II, remembering Korea War, some of my teachers going off and being killed, and then Vietnam and being in the military for 5 years in the middle of the 1960s, and thinking about it, but it wasn't the top issue on my mind. But as time has gone on, it is interconnected.
I discovered your biggest threat, not Mitt.
As well
Ron.
as the issue of liberty. And of course, you can't talk about the money issue and the issue of liberty or the foreign policy without considering the foreign policy, because the more we're engaged overseas, the bigger mess we get ourselves into. And I have a little note paper that I use at home, and the one quote on there is, war is the health of the state. And I believe that so sincerely, that our civil liberties are undermined. One time during the presidential debate, Tim Russert came in and he made the initial announcement, well, this debate is going to be on domestic economic issues, because last time you guys talked about foreign policy. And I even, when I had my first chance, I made I hope a polite objection to this by saying that you can't separate the two. How can you believe that your foreign policy doesn't have a lot to do with your domestic economic policy, because it runs up debt and all the problems that you have. So it's all intertwined, but it should be narrowed down mostly significantly to the issue of liberty. I think our country was the greatest, and we had the greatest amount of wealth and abundance of any other country because we were the freest nation. But that freedom is on the ropes. And I think a growing number of American people are agreeing with us because they see what's happening. And we have a great opportunity. I see a grand coalition building. They will not ever be in agreement on all our views. But if we respectfully present our case for civil liberties and the anti-war position, I really am convinced that we will soften the market for them accepting our economic views because their economic views are non-viable. It's not so much that they will think, oh yeah, this is really important and that's what we must do, and we accept their argument that the greatest prosperity and the greatest amount of wealth and the best way to take care of the poor and the middle class is through free markets. But it's the failure of their system that will make them think differently. So we have this tremendous opportunity to bring this coalition together and be available to help rebuild. And this is what I think is happening. And it's, as I mentioned about the TP, under the belief that 100 years ago or so, for some reason, our intellectual community got divided on the ideas of liberty. And I don't think the founders were divided. I think they understood that if you had personal liberty, it meant freedom of speech and your civil liberties, and that you aren't going to have an income tax, and that the government was supposed to run everything. But all of a sudden, in the beginning of the 20th century, it became more understood that freedom is divided in half. You have economic freedom over here, and you have personal liberties over here, and everybody's supposed to join in and make the world safe for democracy. And that's where we've been stuck. And we got to put it back together again. I think there should be a rallying cry for financial reasons and moral reasons and constitutional reasons for us to change the foreign policy. And we will know that we're making progress then on that when we see the troops coming home from all over the world. And on personal liberties, we get a lot of good lip service from the conservatives. Yes, we want individual liberty. We're for this, except when it comes to what you put in your mouth and what you smoke and what else you do and what you say and what political correctness is and all these things. And maybe we can get them to come around and knowing what real liberty is all about and put personal liberty in context of the property. Property really... if you only had one thing to protect, you don't need 10 amendments. Wouldn't property protect it? If nobody can take your property, including the government, and you have property, it would protect your First Amendment rights because it's your personal property. It's your house, your home, your church, or whatever, your newspaper. That's private property. So if you could just get the conservatives to come over and say, oh, this is a property right for you to defend individual liberty. But it has to be put back together. And it has to be started with the idea of where our rights comes from and what is important. One thing that annoys me to no end that I hear constantly in Washington, and you hear it all the time, is hyphenated Americans. I mean, why do we have to be hyphenated? And when we make progress, there will not be hyphenated Americans. There will be individuals Americans deserving equal rights for everyone. Freedom actually is a rather new idea. If you look at all of history, thousands and thousands of years, and yet we're about to give up on this grand experiment. The grand experiment has lasted, for a couple hundred years and is about to fade. So this is a time that has come upon us to make our stand. The Mises Institute has made their stand for a good many decades, and they've had a great deal of influence, and I was impressed. Lou, when we were at the University of Michigan, they started talking about Austrian economics and all these things, so it is pervasive. The Mises Institution and other libertarian think tanks and free market groups deserve a lot of credit for the change in the mood of this country, so I congratulate you. I thank you for coming today, and I will be around for a little bit fighting for the cause of liberty. Thank you very much.